She only knocked to borrow sugar from the woman next door. She didn't expect to find the kind of love that quietly changes everything. The knock came just after 7, soft but deliberate, the kind that suggested hesitation rather than urgency. I was barefoot, hair still damp from the shower, the smell of coffee already filling my apartment because I refused to start a morning without it. Even on a Saturday, I opened the door expecting the courier who was forever losing packages in this building. Instead, it was her. The woman from 3B stood there holding a small ceramic jar, tucked awkwardly against her chest. She wore an oversized sweater the color of storm clouds, sleeves falling over her hands like she hadn't quite decided what to do with them yet. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot that suggested effort without obsession. Her eyes flicked down the hallway, then back up to me. "Hi," she said, like the word was a question. "This is going to sound ridiculous, but do you have sugar? Or honestly, coffee? Mine's out, and I realized this too late." I blinked once, then laughed. "You came prepared with the prop," I said, nodding at the jar. She looked down at it as if surprised to find it there. I panicked. That did it. I stepped back and held the door open. "Come in before you change your mind." She hesitated for half a breath, just long enough for me to notice, then crossed the threshold. The apartment seemed to adjust around her presence, like the light itself had decided to behave better. She glanced around, taking in the mismatched furniture, the plants threatening to take over the windowsill, the stack of books I'd been meaning to donate for at least a year. "It's cozy," she said, not aggressively minimalist. "I recover from sterile environments by overcompensating," I replied, moving toward the kitchen. "Coffee's already on. You're in luck." "Good," she said, then quieter, because this was a gamble. I passed her a mug without thinking too much about it. Our fingers brushed. It wasn't dramatic, just a brief contact, but something in her expression shifted. Attention sharpening, like she'd suddenly arrived fully in the moment. "What's your name?" I asked. "Rowan," she said. "I moved in last month. I keep meaning to introduce myself and then getting distracted by everything." "I get that," I said. "I'm Mira." She smiled at that, the kind of smile that stayed a second longer than necessary, like she was testing its weight. We stood at the counter, leaning without touching. Outside, the city did what it always did: sirens, buses, distant voices. But inside, time seemed to slow to a more reasonable pace. The coffee conversation lasted longer than it reasonably should have. It started with the basics: work, the neighborhood, which corner cafe was secretly terrible, but gradually loosened into something warmer. Rowan told me she edited podcasts, that she worked from home and sometimes forgot what day it was. I admitted I restored old photographs for a small archive downtown, that I spent hours carefully rebuilding faces no one remembered anymore. "That's kind of beautiful," she said. "It's kind of lonely," I corrected, smiling so she wouldn't think I regretted it. She looked at me, really looked, in a way that made it hard to keep up the self-deprecation. Lonely things deserve care too. I didn't have a clever answer for that. The mugs were empty before either of us noticed. I refilled them without asking, and she didn't object. Instead, she drifted toward the window, examining the plants like they'd offered to tell secrets if she listened closely enough. "You keep them alive," she said, impressed. "Barely, it's a mutual struggle." She laughed, softer now. Outside, the afternoon had crept closer to evening, light thinning into gold. The room felt closer, smaller in a way that wasn't uncomfortable. Familiar, almost. As if this were not the first time we'd shared it. "I should probably go," Rowan said, though she made no effort to move toward the door. "Probably," I agreed, equally stationary. Neither of us did anything about it. She turned then, leaning back against the counter, arms crossed loosely, watching me like this was a scene she didn't want to interrupt. "You seem easy to be around," I inhaled, unsure why that felt like praise and invitation all at once. "So do you." The silence stretched, weighted but not heavy. Some silences are bridges, not gaps. This was one of them. When the sky outside darkened fully, Rowan sighed. "If I stay any longer, I'll start thinking this was fate or something." "And that would be terrible," I said. "Potentially dangerous," she replied. Then, after a beat, "Walk me to the door?" I did. Slowly. At the threshold, the hallway light buzzed faintly, breaking the spell just enough to make us aware of it. Rowan turned to face me, hands still wrapped around the mug I'd inexplicably told her to keep. "I don't want to leave," she said, honest and unembellished. Something in my chest tightened. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. "Then don't," I said. She searched my face, looking for an out I wasn't offering. When she found none, her shoulders relaxed. Just a fraction. "Okay," she said quietly. And just like that, the door closed behind us. Not with urgency, not with drama, but with intention. They didn't move at first. Rowan lingered near the entryway, fingers tracing the seam of the mug, as if relearning the texture of the room. I watched her, absurdly aware of everything at once. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint drip of the bathroom tap, my own heartbeat doing way too much for a casual neighbor situation. "Is this weird?" she asked suddenly. "Yes," I said. "Immensely." Her lips quirked. "Do you want me to leave?" "No," I answered, quicker than I meant to. "Stay until it feels less weird, or more. We'll see which direction it goes." She laughed, tension cracking like ice. "You realize that's not reassuring at all. I'm not very practiced at having beautiful women wander into my apartment asking for coffee." Her gaze flicked up sharply. "Beautiful, huh?" Heat crawled up my neck. "Are we pretending you don't own a mirror?" She considered that, then walked deeper into the apartment, setting the mug on the coffee table. "All right," she said, tugging her sleeves up to her elbows. "Make it less weird. Show me something embarrassingly personal so I feel better about inviting myself into your life." I gestured toward the bookshelf. "That's where most of my shame lives." She scanned the spines, head tilting. "You alphabetize by author and color code by impulse. That's chaotic discipline. It's a system that makes sense to exactly one person, which is all it needs to do." Her fingers paused on a thin red volume. "You keep your own work here." I blinked. "That's not, give me that." I stepped forward, but she was faster, pulling the photo album off the shelf and hugging it to her chest like a prize. "So this is the embarrassingly personal thing," she said, triumphant. "Good to know I still have instincts." "It's just an old portfolio," I protested, already losing ground. "Perfect." She sat on the couch without asking and patted the cushion beside her. Reluctant and curious in equal measure, I sank down, leaving too much space between us to feel accidental. Rowan opened the album. The first page held a black and white photograph of a woman on a train platform. The edges cracked, time pressing in around the grain. "Did you take this?" she asked. "It was taken in 1943, I said. I restored it. The original was almost gone." She studied the image for a long moment. "You brought her back." "Kind of. I guess I just helped her stay." Rowan turned the page, slower this time. "You do this for strangers all day?" "Mostly," I said. "Families send things in, old archives, random boxes from attics. There's something satisfying about rescuing faces from oblivion, even if no one knows their names anymore." "That doesn't bother you?" she asked. "Not knowing their stories?" "It does," I admitted. "But I like the idea that somewhere, somebody might remember them a little longer because of what I did." She let that sit between us, then softly, "And who does that for you?" I swallowed. "For me?" "Yeah," she looked up. "Who keeps you from fading?" The question hit harder than it should have. I tried to deflect with a joke and couldn't quite find one that didn't sound hollow. "I haven't really thought about it," I said instead. Rowan closed the album gently. "You should." The room felt smaller again, but in a deliberate way now, like it had drawn itself closer around us. Our knees were still an inch apart. It felt like an argument with gravity not to close the gap. She shifted, angling toward me. "Do you always let strangers see the soft underbelly of your life on the first coffee run?" "You stopped being a stranger somewhere between sugar and existential questions," I said. "Also, you brought a jar. That implies commitment." Her smile was slower this time, less reflex, more intention. "I like your brain," she murmured. "You've seen, 3% of it?" Quality sample size. My hand rested on the cushion between us, palm open, not reaching but not retreating either. I could feel the possibility of touch hanging in the air like static before a storm. Rowan's gaze dropped to my hand, then back to my face. "Can I ask you something a little intrusive?" "That seems on brand for tonight." "Have you ever," she hesitated, picking her words carefully, Is this new for you, this kind of situation? You mean, I said, forcing my voice steady. Am I freaking out because I might be attracted to the gorgeous woman on my couch who lives 10 feet away from my front door? Her breath caught, a small sound quickly masked. I wasn't going to call myself gorgeous, but I'm not arguing with the rest of that sentence. I exhaled, looking down at my hands. I've dated women before. It's not that, it's just I searched for the right phrase. I don't usually let things happen this fast, or this close. Proximity plus chemistry has historically been a bad combination for me. Rowan considered that, nodding slowly. So we're both aware this is dangerous. Extremely. And we're still sitting here, also extremely. Her fingers inched across the cushion, stopping a breath from mine, not quite touching, waiting. It was suddenly impossible to pretend I didn't understand what was happening. The only question left was whether I'd let it. I broke first. Not with a kiss or a confession, but by leaning back and laughing under my breath. The kind of laugh that escapes when you're teetering on the edge of something and need air before you fall in. This, I said, gesturing vaguely between us, is escalating very politely, and I don't trust it. Rowan smiled, relieved in a way that made my chest soften. You prefer chaos? I prefer honesty, I said. And right now the honest thing is that I'm trying not to kiss you because I don't want to ruin a perfectly good beginning by rushing into the middle. That silenced her. Not uncomfortably, if anything, it sharpened the moment, like we'd both stepped closer to the truth and needed a second to adjust our footing. Rowan withdrew her hand, lacing her fingers together in her lap. I appreciate you saying that out loud. I try to, I said. It usually makes things harder, but clearer. Clear can be good, she tilted her head. So what happens instead? We talk, I said, thinking it through as I said it. We sit in this uncertainty for a minute. We don't pretend it isn't there, but we also don't let it decide things for us. She laughed softly. You're very good at being careful. I've had practice cleaning up messes that didn't need to be made. That sounds like experience talking. It is. I hesitated, then added, I've lived next door to silence before. It's worse than tension. Her gaze softened, some understanding clicking into place. I moved here because I wanted quiet, she said. Turns out quiet is unsettling when it's the only thing talking back. We smiled at each other, less charged now, more grounded. The air loosened, not emptied, but rearranged. Rowan leaned back fully this time, tucking one leg beneath her. Okay, she said. Let's talk like two extremely normal neighbors who definitely didn't almost make terrible, wonderful choices over coffee. Perfect, I nodded solemnly. What do you want to know? She thought for a moment. Why did you open the door? I blinked. Because you knocked? No, she said gently. Because you could have said you didn't have coffee, or pretended you weren't home. You didn't. I considered it honestly. Because you looked like someone who doesn't ask for help unless she's already decided she can survive the answer. Rowan inhaled sharply. That's uncomfortably accurate. I have a specialty. She studied me with renewed interest. What about you? What about me? Would you have knocked? She asked. If the situation were reversed, the question landed heavier than expected. No, I admitted. I would have gone without. She nodded slowly. See, that's the difference. Between what? Between people who hope and people who endure. She smiled crookedly. I'm trying to be more of the first. I felt something warm uncoil low in my chest. Not desire exactly, something steadier. And I'm trying to stop pretending endurance is a virtue. Silence followed, this time comfortable. We both glanced at the clock, surprised to see an hour had vanished unnoticed. I really should go, Rowan said, more convincingly this time. I stood, offering her the mug she'd forgotten. For appearances, yes. She took it, fingers brushing mine again, this time without apology or tension. It felt easy. At the door, she hesitated, then turned. Mira. Yeah? I don't regret tonight, she said. Even the almosts. I suspect the almosts are the point. Her smile lingered longer now. Good night, neighbor. Good night, Rowan. The door closed softly between us. I leaned my forehead against it once she was gone, heart steady but alert, like something had woken up and decided to stay awake. From the other side of the wall, faint footsteps crossed the hallway. 10 feet away, someone else was thinking about almost too. And for once, Stepping back didn't feel like retreating. It felt like setting the stage. Sleep avoided me with impressive dedication. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling fan as it traced lazy circles overhead, replaying the evening in fragments, the way Rowan's voice softened when she talked about quiet, the careful space she'd kept once I named it, the restraint we'd both exercised like it was a shared language. Restraint, I reminded myself, was not absence. It was intention. Still, when morning came, I was already awake. Coffee brewed without ceremony. I stood at the counter in my worn sweatshirt, watching steam curl upward, wondering if knocking on her door before 8 would be charming or unhinged. I settled for opening my window instead. Cool air poured in, carrying the early sounds of the building shifting into day, doors opening, pipes clanking, someone laughing on the stairs. Across the narrow courtyard, Rowan's window was open too. She stood there in a soft t-shirt, hair loose and sleep wild, holding a mug identical to mine. For a beat, neither of us moved. Then she noticed me. Her smile was slow and unmistakably pleased. I lifted my mug in a silent toast. She mirrored it, eyes bright. No words, no commitments, just proof that last night hadn't dissolved with daylight. That was enough to carry me through the morning. We did not immediately become a trope. No dramatic run-ins, no perfectly timed coincidences. Instead, there were small things, familiar things, the kind that build weight quietly if you're not paying attention. Rowan left her shoes outside her door sometimes, comfortable, lived-in shoes, scuffed at the heel. I learned her schedule by sound before I learned it by conversation, the cadence of her step, the particular way her door closed with a soft click instead of a slam. She hummed while unlocking it. Always the same half-remembered tune. Twice that week, I found notes taped to my door. First one, borrowed sugar again. I'll replace it. Promise. R. Second, there's leftover lemon loaf on my counter. This is not a trap. Probably. I stared at the handwriting longer than necessary before knocking. She opened the door, smiling, already mid-laugh. You came fast, that's either flattering or alarming. I smelled lemon, I said. I'm only human. Her apartment mirrored mine in the strangest ways. Warm light, too many plants, books stacked in corners like ideas waiting their turn. But where mine hummed quietly, hers buzzed, alive with half-finished projects and colorful sticky notes clinging to every surface. We sat at her small kitchen table, shoulders close but not touching, eating cake with forks that didn't quite match. This feels very domestic for people who haven't addressed the fact that they're circling each other, Rowan said casually. I nearly dropped my fork. You really don't ease into things, do you? I tried easing, she said. It bored me. I met her gaze, steadying. Circling implies intent. And an intent deserves time. She considered that, chewing thoughtfully. So we're pacing. Yes. Deliberately. Yes. Rowan smiled. Good. I'm bad at pretending I don't want things. That's not a flaw, I said. It's just dangerous. She laughed. To who? I didn't answer right away. Then, honest as ever, to the parts of us that remember how much it hurts when they leave. The room quieted, not broken, just deepened. Rowan reached for her mug, then stopped short of touching me. I don't leave lightly, she said. I know, I replied. I wasn't sure how, I just knew. Days folded into one another. Conversations grew longer, silences more companionable. We walked the neighborhood together one evening, talking about nothing important until it somehow became everything. Favorite memories, worst habits, the shape of futures neither of us had named out loud yet. We still hadn't kissed. The awareness of it hovered constantly, not sharp but warm, a low current under everything we did. It made small moments electric, passing plates, brushing fingers, standing too close while reading the same line of text. One night, as we stood outside our doors, reluctant as always to end things, Rowan exhaled and said, I keep thinking about the first time we almost did this. Me too, I admitted. She leaned against her doorframe, studying me. Does it bother you? No, I said. It anchors it, makes it real. Her smile softened. I'm glad it's you. The words landed quietly, permanently. We lingered another moment, breathing the same air. Still no kiss, but the wanting was beginning to feel less like danger, and more like a promise unfolding at its own pace. The near misses started to blur into a rhythm of their own. Mornings became a silent exchange across the courtyard. Raised mugs, lazy smiles, the occasional ridiculous face, pulled just to see the other react. Nights stretched long on opposite sides of the wall, where sound traveled easily and intention stayed careful. I learned the cadence of Rowan's evenings by ear alone, her keys dropping into the bowl, the scrape of a chair, music low enough to feel, rather than hear. It shouldn't have been intimate. It absolutely was. One evening, rain arrived without flourish, sudden, persistent, the kind that soaked through coats and plans alike. I was locking my apartment when her door flew open, Rowan standing there half-drenched, hair plastered to her face, breathless and laughing like she'd outrun herself. "Okay," she said, pointing behind her. "Important question. Do you own an umbrella that functions under pressure?" "Yes." "Great. Because mine surrendered to gravity and I have groceries that will not survive another minute like this." We ended up running anyway. The umbrella bent uselessly above us as we laughed our way down the block, rain slicking the pavement, our shoulders bumping more freely now, urgency overriding caution. By the time we made it back, soaked and breathless, the restraint felt thinner, frayed in places. Inside her apartment, we stood dripping on the mat, shoes abandoned, rainwater pooling beneath us. "You look," I started, then stopped. Rowan's eyes were dark, focused. "Say it." "You look like trouble," I finished. "Funny," she said softly. "I feel like relief." Silence pressed in, heavier than before. This one didn't feel like a bridge. It felt like a threshold. Rowan exhaled. "Mira, I don't want to rush you, I mean that, but I need to know something." I nodded. "Okay. Are we moving toward something?" she asked carefully. "Or are we protecting ourselves from it?" The question was clean, unavoidable. I thought of the nights listening for her steps, the mornings watching her window, the way her presence had threaded itself quietly into my days. Protection, I realized, had become a habit, not a decision. "I think," I said slowly, "we're done pretending that standing still is safer." Rowan stepped closer, not into me, just close enough to feel the heat of her skin. "Good, because I don't want this to be an almost anymore." My heart hammered. "Neither do I." We hovered there, the moment stretching, not fragile now, but deliberate. When she lifted her hand, she stopped inches from my face, waiting. I closed the distance. The kiss was unhurried, careful but not hesitant. Like confirmation rather than discovery. Her mouth was warm, steady, familiar in a way that startled me. We didn't rush deeper, we didn't need to. The world narrowed to breath and intention and the quiet understanding that something had shifted. Irreversibly, and exactly when it was meant to. When we finally pulled back, foreheads resting together, Rowan smiled. "Worth the wait," she murmured. "Yes," I said, without doubt. The rain kept falling outside, softer now, like it had done its dramatic duty and was content to settle into background noise. Inside, the world felt newly rearranged. We didn't separate right away. Our foreheads stayed together, breaths evening out, hands still hovering as if unsure whether to retreat or stay honest. Rowan laughed quietly. "Well, that answers that." "It raises at least 6 new questions," I said. "Good," she replied. I was worried we'd suddenly become very normal. Her hand finally found my waist. Not gripping, not claiming, just anchoring. The contact sent a slow warmth through me, steadier than the earlier spark. "This doesn't feel scary," she said, more to herself than to me. "No," I agreed. "It feels solid." She pulled back enough to look at me properly, eyes searching my face again, the way she always did before stepping forward. "I want to keep doing this the way we've been doing it." "Carefully?" I asked. "Intentionally," she corrected, "with permission to want more, but not race toward it like it's going to disappear." I exhaled, something unclenching in my chest. "That sounds unexpectedly mature." "Don't ruin it by saying that." We grinned at each other, the tension easing into something playful, almost domestic again. Rowan grabbed a towel from a hook by the door and tossed it at me. "You're dripping on my floor. I ran through a storm for you." I'll memorialize the puddle later. We moved around each other easily now, as if the kiss had rewritten some internal map. I helped her unload the groceries, slightly battered but intact, and we argued lightly over where things belonged, her kitchen revealing small truths the way shared spaces always do. You alphabetize spices, I asked, opening a cabinet. Emotionally, she said. Cinnamon has seniority. I laughed, then caught her watching me with that quiet, attentive gaze again. It made me self-conscious in a way I didn't mind. What? I asked. I'm just thinking, she said, about how strange it is that something can feel inevitable and unexpected at the same time. That's how the good things usually sneak up, I said. She nodded, then glanced at the clock. You should probably go before we collapse into a shared toothbrushing routine on day one. Tragic, but fair. At the door, there was another pause, this one different, softer. Rowan leaned in and kissed me again, brief but certain. Good night, Mira. Good night, I echoed. Back in my apartment, I stood listening to the rain and the faint echo of her door closing. The quiet no longer felt empty. It felt inhabited. The days that followed unfolded gently, like we'd collectively agreed not to spook the thing that was growing. We cooked together for the first time on a Wednesday, when neither of us had planned for company. It started with a text, "Do you eat pasta like a normal person or with opinions?" and ended with us barefoot in my kitchen, wine glasses forgotten on the counter while we danced badly to a playlist neither of us would claim responsibility for. Rowan burned the garlic. I teased her mercilessly, then admitted I'd done the same thing the night before. You could have invited me, she said. I didn't want to assume. She gave me a look. We're past assuming. But still, no rushing. We kissed easily now, touched more freely, but always with the same quiet check-in. The mutual awareness that choosing each other slowly was part of the magic. One night, stretched out on opposite ends of the couch, feet tangled, Rowan stared at the ceiling and said, I don't know where this goes. I turned toward her. Does that scare you? She shook her head. It excites me. I'm just not used to excitement. That doesn't feel like it's borrowing against future regret. I reached for her hand this time. She didn't hesitate. Maybe, I said, we're learning a new way to want. Her fingers tightened around mine. I like it. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, something steady and deliberate was taking root. No longer almost, not yet forever, but undeniably real. Things didn't crescendo the way stories like to pretend they do. There was no sudden declaration that changed everything, no sharp turn that made the future obvious. Instead, what shifted was quieter, and because of that, unmistakable. It happened on an ordinary night. We were on my couch, takeout containers half empty on the coffee table, Rowan's legs draped over mine like they'd always belonged there. The TV played something we weren't watching. Rain ticked lightly against the windows again, as if the universe had decided that was our soundtrack now. Rowan traced slow, absent shapes on my arm, not teasing, not distracting, just there. You know, she said, I keep waiting for the moment where this gets complicated. I glanced down at her. This isn't complicated? She smiled faintly. It's complex. That's different. How so? Complicated feels like resisting gravity, she said. This feels like orbit. That landed somewhere deep. I didn't answer right away. I watched the rise and fall of her breathing, the familiar curve of her mouth I'd learned without trying. I realized something this week, I said finally. Uh-oh. I don't strategize anymore. Her fingers stilled. About what? About you, I said simply. I don't wake up wondering how not to want too much. I don't edit what I say in advance. I just show up. Rowan sat up slowly, turning to face me fully now, the humor fading into something more intent. That's not small. No, I agreed. It scares me exactly the right amount. She studied my face like she was reading something familiar written in a new language. I used to think intensity was the same thing as depth, she said quietly. That if it didn't overwhelm me, it wasn't real. And now? And now, she said, voice softer, steadier. I come home and feel placed, like something in me stops pacing. I reached up, tucking her hair behind her ear. The gesture felt natural, unexamined. I don't want to build a life on adrenaline, I said. I want it to hold. Rowan's eyes shone, not dramatic, not breaking, grounded. I want that too, she said. With you. The words settled between us without force. No rush to define them, no need. We kissed, not hungry, not hesitant, affirming. The decision, when it came, was mutual and almost anticlimactic. It happened over coffee, of course. Rowan stood in my kitchen, mug in hand, scrolling absently on her phone. My lease is up in 3 months. I looked at her. Yeah? Yeah, she met my gaze. I could renew. Or, I set my mug down. My heart didn't race, it slowed. You could, I said carefully. She exhaled, smiling. Or I could not. The silence stretched, but it didn't strain. I don't need dramatic gestures, she added. I don't need certainty carved in stone. I just want to know we're walking in the same direction. I thought of all the ways I used to guard my life like it was fragile. How quiet had once meant alone. How now quiet meant Rowan humming in the next room. We are, I said. Her smile was immediate, unguarded. Good. We didn't move overnight. We did it slowly, intentionally. Books migrating shelf by shelf. Clothes appearing in each other's drawers like they'd always been misplaced. There were negotiations, compromises, small disagreements handled without rupture. The intimacy deepened too, not just in touch, but in patience, in apology, in learning each other's silences without mistaking them for distance. Sometimes, late at night, Rowan would rest her head on my shoulder and say, "Can you believe this started with sugar?" "I think it started with choice," I'd reply. From time to time, I caught our reflections in windows, 2 women framed by normalcy, by warmth, by ease, and it startled me how good it felt not to ache for more. One evening, months later, as we locked the door and turned toward home, Rowan squeezed my hand. "You know," she said, "I don't feel like I'm waiting anymore." Neither did I. The future wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It just stayed. The end. If this story stayed with you, subscribe for more slow-burn sapphic romance, and share it with someone who believes love doesn't have to be loud to be real.